Everyone at that wedding thought my parents were giving my sister a dream. Asterisk, a lake house. Fireworks streaking the sky in gold and violet, crystal glasses catching every flicker of light. Champagne bubbling over, spilling into delicate flutes like someone was trying to show off money they didn't really have. The linens on the tables were impossibly white, crisp, and perfectly ironed, betraying the careful choreography of appearances. Guests smiled, nodded, murmured praise about generosity and tradition, all of them basking in the illusion of perfection. Asterisk, but I didn't see perfection. Asterisk, I saw the truth, and the truth was terrifying. What my parents were really giving Elizabeth wasn't a home. It wasn't a gift wrapped in love or pride. It was a countdown, a ticking, inevitable financial explosion. Asterisk $144,000. Due in exactly 30 days. I didn't clap. I didn't cheer. I didn't even glance at Elizabeth. My stomach had tied itself in knots the second the fireworks began. Asterisk instead. I checked my phone. Asterisk. The screen glowed faintly in the night, a tiny rectangle of light in the darkness, yet it illuminated more than the dock ever could. Asterisk, a notification I had set months ago, months before the wedding. Months before my parents even thought about passing down a legacy, was staring back at me. Asterisk, balloon payment due $144,000 to 30 days. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Everyone above me on that deck was laughing, sipping champagne, complimenting each other on the toast. Their world was filled with sparkle and applause, a perfectly polished version of reality. Asterisk, but down here on the wooden planks of the dock, the air was heavy with the smell of algae, damp wood, and decay from the lake below. It was sharp, real, grounding. A perfect contrast to the artificial sweetness of perfume and fake smiles above. Asterisk, the lake stretched before me, dark and endless. I could hear the water lapping softly against the pilings, almost like it was whispering a warning.
Every
pop of a champagne cork from above seemed distant, hollow. I stepped further out, letting the boards creak under my weight, and for a moment I felt almost invisible, completely unseen by the people who were celebrating a lie. Asterisk, I thought about my sister, spinning in her white dress, holding a sparkler, radiant and innocent, completely unaware of what was waiting for her. The world had trained her to smile, to pose, to be adored. But she didn't know how to read a contract, to notice the fine print, to calculate the cost of a decision hidden in layers of deception. She had never needed to, and I knew exactly what that gift would mean. Asterisk, I knew that the lake house, a property that had been in our family for generations, was no longer an asset. It was a liability, a trap carefully disguised as love. The moment she signed that deed, she would inherit their debt, their mistakes, their fraud, all of it wrapped neatly in a ribbon of parental pride. Asterisk, I had always been the invisible ledger. In our family, the quiet one who counted, calculated, and cleaned up mistakes no one else saw. While Elizabeth was the trophy, the influencer, the face everyone adored, I had been the back office, wiring deductibles for totaled cars, covering bills they hid from each other, paying the invisible costs so that appearances remained untarnished. Asterisk, I told myself it was loyalty. I told myself it was love. I told myself I was the responsible one. The pillar. Asterisk, but looking at that notification, feeling the cold air bite at my skin and hearing the distant applause fade into the night, I realized I hadn't been a pillar. I had been a silent investor in a failing enterprise. Asterisk, my parents weren't rich. They were drowning in credit cards, second mortgage, and illusions. The champagne they were drinking? Charged. The linens? Paid off with borrowed money. The lake house? Already mortgaged, already bleeding. They were experts at maintaining the illusion of wealth while hiding the cracks in every foundation. Asterisk, and now they were about to hand their sinking ship to my sister. Asterisk, I exhaled slowly, the tension coiling in my chest, and I stepped further onto the dock. The wooden planks shifted beneath me, the lake rippled silently, and for the first time, I allowed myself to feel the weight of the responsibility I had carried for years. Asterisk, not the weight of my own survival. Asterisk, but the weight of knowing what was about to happen to someone I loved. and being powerless to stop it. At least until that moment. Asterisk $144,000. 30 days. Tick tick. Asterisk. And no one above me had the slightest clue. Above me the deck was alive with glitter and sound. Asterisk string lights draped across the railing, each bulb reflecting off crystal glasses like tiny suns suspended in the night. Asterisk the laughter of the guests rolled like distant waves, seemingly harmless. Yet to me it sounded hollow, rehearsed, almost mocking. Asterisk champagne corks popped in rhythm with the fireworks. But the sound was distant, surreal, like it belonged to another world. Asterisk my parents stood at the center, radiant in their carefully constructed personas. Asterisk they smiled, laughed, nodded, basking in the adoration of everyone around them. Asterisk, to anyone watching, they were untouchable, benevolent, powerful, a picture-perfect family handing down a legacy. But I knew better. Asterisk beneath the polish, beneath the smiles, beneath the applause, there was something dark. Asterisk something almost criminal in its subtlety. Asterisk they weren't rich. They were drowning, buried under layers of debt. Credit cards, second mortgages, and carefully concealed loans no one else was allowed to see. Asterisk the champagne my father raised in a toast, charged yesterday. Asterisk the linens they used to impress the guests, paid with borrowed money, interest already accruing. Asterisk the lake house my sister believed was a gift, already sinking financially under the weight of mortgage, hidden liens, and fraudulent settlements. Elizabeth didn't know. She twirled in her dress, holding a sparkler like it was a wand, her face radiant, her smile wide. Asterisk she laughed, the sound light and airy. But it pierced me because it was fragile. Asterisk she had been groomed to trust. To depend, to never question. And this trust, this fragile innocence, was exactly what my parents were exploiting. They had insulated her from reality her entire life. Asterisk every gift, every praise, every handout had been a brick in the cage of privilege they built around her. Asterisk they had stripped her of survival instincts, of the ability to calculate risk, to read contracts, to recognize danger. Asterisk and now that cage was about to become a trap. Asterisk I stepped further out onto the dock, letting the boards creak beneath me, letting the wind bite my face. Asterisk the lake smelled of damp earth and algae, the faint rot of decay that the perfumed air above could never mask. Asterisk it was real, honest, brutal. Asterisk unlike the sparkling, artificial world above me. Asterisk I thought of every time I had cleaned up the family's mess quietly. Asterisk wiring deductibles when Elizabeth totaled her car, covering hidden medical bills, tracking fraudulent settlements. Asterisk ensuring that the world never saw the cracks my parents carefully concealed. Asterisk I had told myself it was loyalty, responsibility, being a pillar. Asterisk but the reality staring back at me now was darker. Asterisk I hadn't been a pillar. Asterisk I had been a silent accomplice, an invisible operator in a failing enterprise. And that enterprise was about to crush the only person I had ever loved in this family, Elizabeth. Asterisk the lake house, the jewel of the family legacy, wasn't a gift, it was a bomb, a liability transfer. Asterisk a calculated move to save their appearances at my sister's expense. Asterisk every pop of a champagne cork above me felt like the ticking of a clock counting down to disaster. Asterisk every laugh sounded like a drum marking the time until she would inherit this carefully hidden catastrophe. Asterisk I exhaled slowly, my chest tight, heart racing in the quiet of the dock. Asterisk the numbers flashed in my mind. $144,000, 30 days, asterisk interest compounding, default looming. Asterisk penalty clauses, legal exposure, fraud settlements. Asterisk I was the only one who could see it, the only one who understood what was about to happen. And I realized that standing here, invisible in the shadows, I carried the responsibility not just of numbers, but of life and survival. Asterisk because no one else on that deck would notice until it was too late. Asterisk and by the time they did, it would be too late. Everyone at that wedding thought my parents were giving my sister a dream. A real, sparkling, perfect dream. Asterisk a lake house by the water's edge, its white pillars glowing under the fireworks. Asterisk fireworks streaking across the sky like miniature meteors bursting into golds and violets, reflecting in every polished surface, every champagne glass, every admiring eye. Asterisk crystal glasses clicked together, spilling champagne into delicate flutes, bubbles dancing like tiny, fleeting promises that someone would pay for later. Asterisk the linens were impossibly white, ironed to a perfection that whispered of meticulous planning, of money carefully spent to create the illusion of care and elegance. Asterisk every flower in the centerpieces stood upright, pristine, arranged to convey opulence and grace. Asterisk the guests smiled, nodded, complimented one another in rehearsed tones, oblivious to the tension beneath the surface. But I didn't see perfection. I saw the cracks, the skeleton hidden behind every smile, the truth that no one else wanted to notice. Asterisk what my parents were really giving Elizabeth wasn't a gift. Asterisk it wasn't a home. It wasn't love wrapped in a pretty bow. It was a countdown. Asterisk a financial bomb, carefully disguised as generosity. Asterisk $144,000. 30 days. I didn't clap. Asterisk I didn't cheer. Asterisk I didn't even glance at my sister. Asterisk instead I checked my phone. Asterisk the screen glowed faintly in the dark, a rectangle of light illuminating more than the dock ever could. It was a glow of forewarning. A single notification, scheduled months ago, waiting for this exact moment. Asterisk balloon payment due $144,000 to 30 days. Asterisk my stomach twisted. My throat tightened. Asterisk while everyone else was celebrating, laughing and imagining a legacy, I was counting the cost. Interest rates, penalties, default triggers. The words on the screen weren't just numbers. They were a countdown, a signal of imminent disaster. I took a step back from the dock's edge. The wooden planks creaked under my weight, sending vibrations up my legs. Asterisk the lake stretched out below me, black, infinite, swallowing the reflection of the fireworks above. Asterisk its water smelled of algae and damp earth, a sharp contrast to the perfume and polished perfection above. Asterisk I watched Elizabeth, twirling in her white dress, holding a sparkler. Asterisk she was radiant, innocent, utterly unaware. Asterisk her laughter sounded like wind chimes, delicate and beautiful yet. It cut through me because I knew what it masked: helplessness. Asterisk I thought of every time I had been the invisible ledger, the one who fixed mistakes no one else could see. Asterisk when she wrecked her first car. I wired the deductible. Asterisk when mom hid her medical bills. I covered them. Asterisk when dad buried debts. I quietly tracked them, keeping the family afloat. Asterisk I had convinced myself I was loyal, responsible, a pillar. Asterisk the backbone of our family. Asterisk but the numbers on my screen reminded me I wasn't a pillar. I was an invisible investor in a failing enterprise. Asterisk my parents weren't rich. They were drowning, stacked in credit cards. Second mortgage, loans layered on loans, all carefully hidden beneath the illusion of wealth. Asterisk the champagne they sipped above me, charged yesterday. Asterisk the linens beneath their elbows, paid for with borrowed money. Asterisk the house they were gifting, already mortgaged, already sinking, and they were about to pass it all to Elizabeth. I exhaled slowly. The air was cold against my skin. The dock creaked again. The lake whispered beneath me. Asterisk and I realized I was the only one who saw it all. Asterisk $144,000. 30 days. The countdown had begun. Asterisk and nobody above me had a clue. I left the lake behind me, the faint smell of algae and damp wood still clinging to my clothes, the echo of fireworks fading into the distance like distant gunfire. Asterisk the night air in the city was different, dry, sharp, laced with exhaust fumes. Streetlights casting pools of yellow that fractured into shadows across the dashboard. Asterisk each mile on the highway was measured, each thought running through my mind with military precision. Asterisk the daughter who had wanted approval from her parents. The sister who had longed for inclusion had shut down completely. Asterisk in its place, a different mind had awakened. The forensic analyst, cold, calculating, methodical, ruthless. I didn't cry. Asterisk I didn't scream. I didn't feel anger. I felt calculation. Asterisk every transaction, every hidden payment, every fraudulent concealment I had tracked for years now assembled itself in my mind like pieces of a grim puzzle. Asterisk this was no longer about family. Asterisk it was about truth. It was about accountability. And I was the only person who could see the whole picture. Asterisk back in my apartment. I transformed the space into a war room. Asterisk monitors flickered to life, bathing the dark room in cold, electric blue light. Asterisk 3 screens hummed quietly as spreadsheets, PDFs, and court filings stacked themselves in digital order across them. Asterisk A. Fresh pot of coffee steamed on the counter, filling the room with bitter, grounding warmth. Asterisk every sound, the faint whir of the air conditioner, the distant siren, the ticking of the clock became part of a rhythm I matched in my mind, organizing every fact, every figure, every anomaly. I started with the lake house. The deed history was clear 20 years ago. But the illusion of clarity ended there. Asterisk 3 years ago, a second lien appeared, $93,600. Interest rates that could sink an average household. Predatory and hidden. It was designed for desperation, for someone unsuspecting, someone like Elizabeth. I hunted deeper. Asterisk Richard Sterling. Consulting my father's business empire was nothing but smoke and mirrors. Asterisk filings showed activity. Yes, but revenue reports were a joke. Losses stacked upon losses. Asterisk liabilities mounting like a hidden avalanche, buried beneath layers of deceit. And then the court filings. The legal databases yielded what I needed. Case number 21 CVO 943, Peterson versus Sterling, 3 years ago. Settled quietly. Confidential settlement. A former partner accused my father of embezzling funds. The timeline matched the second mortgage perfectly. Asterisk he hadn't renovated kitchens or bought boats. Asterisk he had bought his silence. Asterisk I leaned back in my chair, letting the glow of the screens illuminate every corner of my face. Asterisk. The room smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Asterisk. The city outside buzzed like it had no care for me. But I did. I cared. Asterisk and I understood. Every single detail pointed to the same conclusion. If Elizabeth signed the deed tomorrow, all of this $93,600, hidden liens, potential IRS exposure, the fraudulent settlement would fall on her shoulders. Asterisk. They were using her as a shield, a human buffer to save themselves from consequences. Her legacy wasn't a gift, it was a trap. Perfect, deadly trap meticulously designed by my parents. I compiled everything meticulously. Court dockets. PDFs of settlement agreements. Mortgage notices. Emails between my parents discussing how to transfer the deed before the balloon payment hit. Asterisk everything cross-referenced. Timestamped, annotated. Asterisk I organized it into a single, unassailable dossier. Evidence, motive, opportunity, pattern, intent. Everything a forensic investigator could ever want, sitting neatly in digital form, ready to be deployed. I didn't flinch. I didn't panic. Asterisk. Every detail only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was professional, surgical, strategic. The countdown hadn't stopped. 30 days. $144,000. Asterisk the lake house. A ticking bomb. And I was the only person who could defuse it. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the warmth ground me, the bitter taste sharpening my focus. Asterisk I could feel the tension coiling in my shoulders, tightening my back. Asterisk every nerve was alive, alert, tuned to the rhythm of numbers, deadlines, and hidden risks. Asterisk I thought of Elizabeth spinning on that dock, twirling with a sparkler in her hand, radiant and oblivious. Asterisk the contrast made my chest ache, the beauty above, the horror below. Asterisk she had been trained to trust, to obey, to never question. Asterisk and that trust, that innocence was exactly what my parents were weaponizing. I traced the timeline again. Every payment, every settlement, every hidden lien stacked perfectly, silently preparing to destroy her. Asterisk the consequences weren't abstract, they were tangible. bankruptcy, legal exposure, potential fraud investigation, asterisk, and all of it waiting to fall on someone utterly unprepared. Asterisk, I stared at the glowing screens, the city lights reflecting faintly in the window behind me. Asterisk, I could hear the faint traffic hum, the distant wail of sirens. The rhythm of a world that didn't know the disaster ticking silently in its midst. Asterisk, and I understood one absolute truth. I was the only person who could stop it. No one else had the knowledge. Asterisk, no one else had the foresight. Asterisk, no one else had the courage. The countdown was moving, and I had 30 days to save a life hidden behind a facade of legacy. The morning after the fireworks and the dock, the apartment smelled of strong espresso and the faint burn of overworked coffee beans. A smell that was both comforting and electric, waking every nerve in my body. Asterisk, I could hear the distant city. Seeping through the windows, the faint squeak of tires on wet asphalt. The occasional honk, a reminder that the world moved on. Oblivious to the disaster about to unfold. Asterisk, in the kitchen, my parents were sitting at the marble island, sipping espresso, reviewing guest lists with careful precision, as if they hadn't just orchestrated a transfer of a financial bomb to their golden child the night before. Asterisk, they smiled, chatting in their practiced tones, completely unaware that I was carrying the evidence that would unravel every carefully crafted lie. Asterisk, I walked in, my tablet in hand, the PDF of the foreclosure notice open and glaring back at me. It was not an emotional weapon. It was the truth, rendered in digital ink and unassailable facts. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I audited. Every number, every signature, every legal stamp was there. Undeniable, precise. Asterisk, the balloon payment is due in 30 days. I said, setting the tablet down on the cold stone counter. Asterisk, $144,000. Asterisk, if Elizabeth signs that deed, she inherits the debt. You aren't giving her a house. You're giving her a bankruptcy. Asterisk, my father, Richard, looked at the screen, then back at me. Asterisk, for a moment. His face held disbelief. Then he took a sip of his coffee, like he was tasting something bitter he had anticipated. Asterisk, always the accountant, aren't you, Haley? He sighed, his tone practiced, dismissive, hiding panic behind calm. We're having a moment of family joy, and here you are, auditing happiness. I didn't flinch. This isn't happiness, Dad, I said, my voice flat, precise, slicing through the sugary air of the kitchen. This is math, and the math says you're insolvent. Asterisk, Mom, Lisa, joined the verbal assault, her voice tight, high. Saccharin, we have a business deal closing next month. Everything will be covered. Asterisk, liquidity is fluid. We're doing this for Elizabeth's future. Why can't you just be happy for her legacy? Asterisk, I leaned closer, voice calm, precise, lethal. A legacy shouldn't require a credit check. You are using her credit score to patch the holes in yours. Asterisk, you're passing your financial risk to someone who doesn't even know what a mortgage is. Richard snapped slightly, mask slipping. You've always been jealous of her. He spat, almost unconsciously. Asterisk, you worked hard, yes. But Elizabeth shines. Asterisk, and you can't stand it that she's getting the stage you've always wanted. Asterisk, before I could respond, Elizabeth walked in. Asterisk, white silk robe, flowing, flawless, untouched by reality. Every inch, the princess my parents had trained her to be. But even her perfection couldn't mask the unconscious tension in her body, the tight jaw, the slight narrowing of eyes, the hesitancy in her step. Asterisk, she looked at the tablet but didn't touch it. Asterisk, instead, her eyes met mine, cold, sharp, coated with disdain. Asterisk, are you still doing this? She asked, her voice dripping with the condescension of someone who had never needed to fight for anything in her life. Asterisk, Brandon told me you were lurking on the dock last night, looking miserable. Now you're harassing Mom and Dad. God, Haley, you're so corporate. Everything is a transaction to you. Some people get good things because they are loved. You just can't accept that. I studied her. The anger in my chest cooled into clinical detachment. Asterisk, her golden child cage had worked. She had been insulated from consequences her entire life. Asterisk, Her survival instincts were stunted. Her privilege was a muzzle. She was beautiful, obedient, trained to smile while chaos burned around her. She wasn't an accomplice. She was the perfect victim of a system designed to protect her by disabling her. Asterisk. I'm not jealous. Liz, I said softly, picking up my tablet. Asterisk. I'm terrified for you. Save it, she spat, eyes narrowing, voice sharp. I don't need your protection. I have Dad. Richard's expression shifted, a thin curl of triumph on his lips. He believed he had won, turning the golden child against the scapegoat, securing his cover. Asterisk, he hadn't calculated one thing. I wasn't playing by family rules anymore. I was playing professional rules. Rules where only evidence counted, where emotion was irrelevant. Asterisk rules where the truth had consequences. Asterisk I didn't argue further. I didn't explain. I simply turned, walked out, and began planning the next step. The rehearsal dinner would be the stage. The venue was opulent. Grand hotel downtown, chandeliers dripping crystal, orchids towering on every table. An air of wealth that masked the impending disaster. Asterisk I arrived late, carrying nothing but my laptop bag, a silent declaration that tonight I would not blend in. I had traded the bridesmaid dress for a sharp black suit. Tonight was not about appearances. It was about survival. I scanned the room. Asterisk my parents at the head table, basking in admiration, oblivious to the impending exposure. Asterisk Elizabeth by their side, radiant yet nervous, holding Brandon's hand. Asterisk Brandon checking his watch, bored, unaware of the storm about to hit. I moved toward Elizabeth. One last chance. One final attempt to save her quietly. Asterisk. Liz, we need to talk. Outside, 5 minutes. She pulled away, eyes flashing. Not now, Haley. Dad is about to speak. Don't make a scene. I saw the fear behind her defiance. The tension radiating off our parents was undeniable. Yet she chose the lie over the truth, comfort over danger, and in that moment I realized the only way to save her was to cut the infection out in front of everyone. I nodded to myself. Change of plan. The AV technician at the back of the room was waiting. Asterisk I handed him a flash drive. Asterisk updated presentation. I whispered. Asterisk he plugged it in, unaware the slideshow would obliterate every lie my parents had carefully constructed. Asterisk Richard stood, tapping his spoon against the champagne flute. The room quieted. Friends, family, he began, voice thick with practiced emotion. Asterisk, tonight we celebrate legacy, passing the torch to Elizabeth. I hit the space bar. The screen flickered. Asterisk a PDF of foreclosure notice, blown up to 10 feet tall, glaring at everyone in the room. Asterisk amount due. $144,250. The room froze. Richard froze. Color drained from his face. Asterisk speech caught in throat. I hit the spacebar again. Settlement agreement. Peterson versus Sterling. Fraud allegation. Settlement amount, $93,600. Asterisk date, 3 years ago. I walked to the center of the room. The silence was suffocating. I didn't need a microphone. The words alone carried the weight of truth. It's not a legacy, Dad. It's a liability dump. Asterisk you're giving her your debt, your fraud settlement, your bankruptcy to save yourself. Asterisk Richard tried to bluster, to deny, to lie. I pointed at the screen. That's the county clerk's stamp. Asterisk. The bank's letterhead. Asterisk your signature on the settlement admitting embezzlement. Brandon stood, cold, businesslike. Is this true? Asterisk Richard looked at the room, at the faces staring at him in horror. He didn't speak. He crumbled. Asterisk Elizabeth sobbed, terrified. Asterisk she had been the golden child, the sacrificial lamb, and finally, the veil of privilege had lifted. Asterisk I handed her the folder I had prepared, a budget. Recruiters, a plan for independence. Asterisk, this is how you survive. I whispered. Asterisk, for once you don't need a rich husband or a lake house. You need to stand on your own 2 feet. Asterisk 6 months later, she was working, paying her own rent, learning reality. Asterisk we sat in a cafe. Ordinary, real, Alive. Asterisk, no fireworks. No applause, no lies. Asterisk, just two sisters. Finally seeing each other clearly. Asterisk, I picked up the check, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I had walked through fire to get here. I had been villain, prosecutor, executioner, asterisk, and looking at my sister free from the debt that would have destroyed her. I knew I would do it all again.